Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to this session. My name is Sifa Kinoti, and I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. I'm a delegate of Care About Climate, and I'm also a part of YOUNGO, the Children and Youth Constituency to the UNFCCC. I have the honor of co-moderating this session with Javanik here. He's a fellow from the UNFCCC Secretariat. So the objective of this orientation session is to create an opportunity for young delegates to receive information from the Secretariat on important mandated and non-mandated events to be delivered at these SBs, as well as other processes relevant to the youth. We're also delighted to have the Decoding UNFCCC language session under the Secretariat Youth4Capacity program included as part of the session today. You'll hear about this later on. Before we begin, I'd like to invite colleagues who are seated at the edges to please come closer. Please fill in the seats in front of you and invite your fellow delegates to join in case they haven't come yet. And I'd also like to introduce the agenda of today's session. We will start with some brief opening remarks from the Secretariat, followed by some key information related to engagement as observers. And we will also go to some key resources to support your effective participation here at the SBs. You'll have the opportunity to ask questions, as well as proceed to thematic breakout rooms based on your interest. We'll then close off with some brief updates from YOUNGO, as well as hearing from the COP30 Presidency Youth Climate Champion. I now have the honor of inviting Ina Parvanova. She's the Director of the Communications and Engagement Division of the UN Climate Change, to open this session.
Thank you so much, Sifa, and hello, everyone. Very nice to meet you, very nice to be here. This is one of my favorite sessions at the SB because of the energy in this room, the charge that one feels with all the young delegates. I really enjoy this opportunity because it also is intended to enable you to have a meaningful engagement during SBs. And we're so happy to see so many of you, especially given the coinciding priorities right now with the plenary. The leadership of children and youth in responding to the climate crisis is evident, both within and outside of UNFCCC process. Your voices, ideas, and solutions matter, whether you bring them as a member of a party or an observer organization. Parties have increasingly recognized the need to listen to your concerns and create better opportunities for you to meaningfully contribute to the process. At COP28, parties decided to institutionalize the COP Presidency Youth Climate Championship role to facilitate greater children and youth engagement in climate action, including in the UNFCCC process. During this session, you will have the opportunity to hear from the COP30 Presidency Youth Climate Champion, Marcele Oliveira. You will also receive the latest information from the Secretariat about what's happening over these 2 weeks and how you can follow and engage in these activities. Finally, you will have the opportunity to hear from YOUNGO constituency on other children and youth-related events during these June meetings. We welcome your feedback on this session, and we'll be sharing a survey where you can highlight what you found helpful and what can be improved. This year, we are also delighted to offer the Decoding UNFCCC language workshop, as Sifa mentioned, under the Youth4Capacity program, where you will unpack some of the key terminology and phrases used in the UNFCCC process. We hope that this orientation and decoding session will get you started in the right direction to actively participate in the process, especially for those of you who are attending for the first time. This is your session. I encourage you to make the most of it, ask questions, and network with other delegates. I wish you all a productive session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ina. I'd now like to invite my co-moderator, Javanik, to take us through the next session.
Thank you, Sifa. Now, of course, we have a packed agenda ahead of us. So to get us started, I would like to invite Anindya Bariga from the Observer Relations team, who will provide us some information relevant to observer organizations. As we know, many of us here are from observer organizations and also from party delegates. So over to you, Anindya.
Thank you, Javanik. Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Anindya. I'm from the Observer Relations team, and I just wanted to take a few minutes to give you some general information and resources on observer engagement at SB62. Next slide, please. So to start off, a couple of important resources I can direct you to. There is, for those of you who are observers, the Observer Handbook, which is available on the Observer webpage for SB62, and this has a lot of information, especially for those of you for whom it's your first SBs. There's information on the code of conduct, a lot of engagement opportunities, and the different types of meetings that take place and how you can engage in them. Another important resource is also the guidelines for participation. And so I encourage you to familiarize yourself with both of these resources. Next slide, please. So the UNFCCC has the largest and most diverse subset of observers engaging in it. And it's really important to have meaningful observer engagement in the UNFCCC process, because not only does this really enrich party deliberations and negotiations with the best practices and technical expertise that observers bring, but also legitimizes the process and encourages public support. And now observer participation has been increasing at a very rapid rate. We have almost 4,000 observers at the moment. So there are a lot of engagement opportunities that that observers have at UNFCCC sessions. Next slide, please. So a couple of ways in which observers can engage, and I'll go into this in a little more detail shortly, but there are opportunities to have bilateral meetings with parties on the basis of position papers that observers may be putting together or submissions that they may have put forward. There are opportunities to participate in mandated events and constituted bodies, as well as showcase any findings that observers may have through side events and exhibits or advocacy actions. Next slide, please. In terms of observer organizations, there are NGOs, which typically engage through 9 NGO constituencies. You'll see them listed on the slide. And then we also have IGOs that also engage in the process. Next slide, please. So this slide, and all of this information, I should add, is available in the Observer Handbook. So I'm speeding through it now, but please have a look at the handbook for more details. This slide gives an overview of the different types of meetings that take place in terms of negotiations. It's important to note that in terms of access to the negotiations, observers do have priority over party overflow, and meeting access is capacity limited. And important to also note is that closed meetings can be opened, and open meetings can also be closed in the event that parties decide to do so. Next slide, please. A couple of important points on access. Parties do have priority for room access. So if a party meeting runs over and you have a meeting booked next, rooms may be reassigned at short notice. So our colleagues in the MRA team will assist with this. In terms of seating arrangements, parties do sit at the table, and observers typically sit in the back rows. And then if called on to speak, observers can find a table with a free mic and speak there. Something new in this session is that we will have extremely strict enforcement of speaking time limits for interventions, particularly during plenary. So there will be an electronic countdown timer, as well as a bell, and mics will be turned off once the speaking time is exceeded, so something to keep in mind as well. Next slide, please. A little bit of information on the types of engagement opportunities that there are. We do have dialogues and town halls between the UNFCCC Executive Secretary or the COP President Designate or the SB chairs and observers, so keep an eye on the daily program for this. These are usually facilitated by one of the NGO constituency focal points. Next slide, please. We also have side events at SB62. So this SBs will have 124 side events. So please check the side event schedule or email scE@unfccc.int for more information on side events. Next slide, please. And lastly, advocacy actions. So, excuse me, admitted observer organizations are able to organize advocacy actions, such as visual displays or performances or protests to meaningfully contribute to the process. So this is possible because of a long-standing relationship of trust and collaboration between observers, UNFCCC, and UNDSS. But advocacy actions do have to adhere to the code of conduct and clearance process. Next slide, please. So this slide gives an overview of what the clearance process is like for advocacy actions. I encourage you to look at the Advocacy Actions Observer's Guide for more information on how to apply for an advocacy action, what the guidelines are, and to get in contact with the team. So next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Anindya. Now, before we proceed to the next segment, to allow us to make best use of time, and we know you may have lots of questions, you could log into this Menti and you could put in some of your questions in there, and we will seek to address them later on within the Q&A segment, and also, where necessary, during the breakout group segment. So, without further ado, I would like to invite Hanjin from the Action for Climate Empowerment Unit to walk us through some learning resources, as well as some resources you might find useful over the next 2 weeks.
Thanks so much, Evanik. As introduced, my name is Hyunjin Chang, and I'm from the Action for Climate Empowerment team. If you want to learn more about what is Action for Climate Empowerment, or ACE, as introduced, there will be a breakout discussion just on the topic, so please find me there. Before I go into this portion, can I ask who in the room are the first timers to the SB? By show of hands. Oh, okay. I'm sure you came very well prepared. There's also very good capacity building opportunities provided, for instance, by Youngo before the SB, which might have made you familiarized yourself with the kind of terminology that we'd use, what's at stake at this session. But this presentation here will kind of give you a brief hint or some kind of resources you can tap into to dive deeper into the topics of your interest. Next slide, please. So we haven't really started the SB yet, given that the opening plenary hasn't happened yet. But this is an online course prepared by the Secretariat under the guidance of the Paris Agreement Implementation and Compliance Committee, which gives you details about what is a UN climate change process and some of the terminologies that are used in our process. So it's things like COP, SB, presiding officers, who's the president, who's the chairs, what is an informal consultation, contact group, etc. So this guide can give you some crash course about what to expect in process-wise for the next 2 weeks. Next slide, please. Topic-wise, there's also a very good learning material which is available on the UNCC Learn platform prepared by the Secretariat, and it has been there since the COP28 in UAE. It's called Mastering International Climate Negotiations, All You Need to Know. You'll see that the syllabus on the screen, which contains major topics, which you might be already quite familiar with. But of course, in the next 2 weeks, you might find interest in. For instance, you are here to learn more about global goal and adaptation, but then in talking to other youth delegates or attending some of the mandated event, you got interested in just transition. This will be the first go-to place to get yourself familiar with the topic and again, what's at stake. There's also a little update that the Secretariat is updating the course in preparation for COP30. So at the moment, the course will contain information leading up to COP29. So before what went down at COP29, but this information will be updated. And so again, we will be disseminating this course again right before COP30 with new information. Next slide, please. And India already talked about a different variety of stuff happening at the SB. So there will be negotiations, there will be mandated events, there will be side events, as well as a huge number of press conferences, as well as the events organized by the CUP presidencies. So if you need to save just one website, I'll pick the first QR code, which is the SB62 session page. In this page, you will find all information regarding the latest negotiation text, the link to the schedule of various events, as well as different sorts of announcements. We do have a mobile app, which is available on the App Store and the Google Play Store, or you can also follow the link to our website, which contains more information. There's also a webpage dedicated to information for participants A to Z. This webpage, of course, is findable in the first webpage. You just need to click a few buttons. But here you'll find information about, for instance, how to book a meeting room, how to book a press conference, and information around the kind of a procedure or logistical information. Next slide, please. And then, of course, these two web pages are also accessible through the SB62 session page, which includes detailed daily schedule of events. And this includes every event, things like negotiations, plenary meetings, press conferences, side events, presidency events. And then there's also a dedicated side event portal where all the list of side events that will happen throughout 2 weeks are available. You'll also find information like who's organizing it and a brief description around those events. So if you find anything that is interesting, you can bookmark it and then go visit and participate in the discussion there. And so I think with that, I'll hand the floor back to Giovanni.
Thanks, Sanjin. I think that's sort of a comprehensive presentation in terms of how we can sort of navigate throughout the SB62. So before we proceed into the thematic groups, we would like to open the floor. If there are any questions based on the presentation from Hanjin or Anindya, which you feel that you'd want to raise at this time, feel free to raise your hand and introduce yourself for this. Secondly, you can also fill in via the Mentimeter code on screen, and we could address some of the questions. So I would open the floor now for any questions which may arise. You can simply turn on your mic, actually.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Hope that you can hear me fine. I just wanted to ask, as the children and youth constituency member, because we are there for organizations representing children and young people, what are the mechanisms? And I'm kind of aware, but I'm asking for every one of us in the room present today, so that they also get to know about these mechanisms, if there are any, that are focused on children and safeguarding of children specific, and also what mechanisms, for example, are there? As we know that previously we had, for example, an expert dialogue that was focused very much on children and the disproportionate impact of climate change on them. But how specifically are we basically making the agenda items more receptive to children specific as well? Because I know we have been doing a lot of advocacy around the youth agenda in specific, and as a constituency, we're also kind of changing the momentum now and getting more receptive to children as well. But would love to hear what are the mechanisms from the Secretariat side to bring this on. Thank you.
Thanks. I think there were about 3 points in the question, which we're happy to go over. The first one being the safeguarding of children, and of course their participation is guided by our code of conduct as well as our guideline for participation, which perhaps Anindya can talk more in detail. So anyone under the age of 16 is required to have a chaperone accompanying them at all times. The general code of conduct applies to every participant at the session, at the UN Climate Change Conference and meetings. So they have a channel to report to in the case of any assistance required. SBs are usually not a very popular time for child participation in contrast to the COPs. But we are aware of a few child delegates coming to participate in various mandated events as well as other side events. And we know of some partners who are bringing them who will be providing that safeguarding measure specific to the child delegates that they're bringing. On the second point about the expert dialogue, as you know, the expert dialogue itself was mandated under the outcome of the first global stocktake, which and that decision didn't contain any follow-up measure, but it is an ongoing negotiation item, let's say, and we are aware of various partners, including Youngo, who want to see some follow-up action to be mandated by parties once again, and we very much look forward to that discussion as well. The final point about the entry points of children in the UNFCCC process, I would just like to briefly direct your attention to the ACE dialogue, which is happening on Thursday, Saturday, and next Monday. Especially the Thursday session will look at how to enhance the role of children, youth, and indigenous peoples in the ACE implementation. And one of the focus area will be to discuss how the perspectives and the interests and needs of children can be better mainstreamed and discussed under the work of the constituted bodies and work programs under the UNFCCC. So we very much look forward to welcoming everyone in this room to come to the session and contribute to the discussion with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Hanjin, any other questions from the floor or perhaps those on screen? I don't know if colleagues want to address any of those on screen.
Maybe I can just quickly address, there's a question on the meeting rooms assignment office. That can be found in the foyer of the WCCB building once you enter the venue. But also, you can also email MRA colleagues, and they will also get back to you that way.
Maybe on the remaining 2 points, the one about intergenerational justice issue. If you look at the preamble of the Paris Agreement, there is a famous preamble paragraph, I think it's number 11, that talks about intergenerational equity. So parties should, when take climate action, should respect, consider, and promote a series of human rights, including the rights of children, as well as intergenerational equity. And Paris Agreement being the kind of supreme treaty that we have, it also guides the work of the Secretariat. And as pointed out, there are increasing mentions of, explicit mentions of children and youth in our decisions, and the number of children and youth focused events at this SB session should also testify to the fact that climate change is an intergenerational issue, and that the relevant discussion should take place also within every work streams and every opportunity is possible. The final question about the courses, ideally yesterday, but I guess there's no really a deadline for that. It's an open course, and as I said, there might be a new topic that you find yourself interested in, and then you're welcome to go to the courses and look for more information there. But of course, we also very much encourage you to talk to fellow youth delegates in the conference. Youngo has various working groups. Almost every work streams under the UNFCCC are covered, and so joining them to hear from people who have been involved in the process for a long time, or bringing other experiences that would also be very helpful for you.
Thank.
Hello, everyone. My name is Asma. I'm from Tunisia. My question is maybe if you could share with us what's the difference of the role of young people, like the difference between the SB and COP, and maybe what is specific about the SB. Thank you.
Sorry for taking the floor too much. I think SB is, I don't know how we exactly frame it in our communication and outreach, but it's a preparation meeting for the COP. This is a meetings of subsidiary bodies under the COP, where negotiations on the agenda item really is the main focus. And as I said, we see more child participation, for instance, at the COP, precisely because at the COP there are more avenues to talk about climate change and climate action. There are pavilions, there are things like Green Zone and events organized by the high-level champions and President's Youth Climate Champion. So there are, I would say COPs are more action-oriented and more of sharing of experiences, while SBs, they are trying to influence the negotiation process to the extent possible. So I think that might be one of the main differences. But if anyone wants to.
No, thanks, Hanjen, for that response. Now, in the interest of time, since I know we also want to hear from you, and we will now split into the groups based on the following areas, which would have actually been identified by young people as well. So you have an opportunity to engage with colleagues from the Secretariat on how you can get involved in the various thematic areas, and as well as what is happening at the SBs here. So I'd invite you to scan the QR code where you'd receive the thematic resources, the thematic presentation resources, which would then be able to guide the discussions going forward. Just for your information, in terms of the group discussions, which my colleagues would shortly show where they are according around the room. We have a group on capacity building, where you'll hear about the Youth4Capacity program, on the global goal of adaptation, one on finance, just transition work program, and also action for climate empowerment. Also in the resources, you would also be getting a slide on gender for those interested in that thematic area, where you can get to know what's happening around gender, and you can have access to those resources as well in there. So at this time, I think colleagues will be around the room with the various signs, and feel free to join based on your thematic presentations. We would have this for 15 minutes, and then would return for the final segment. So to my right, we have ACE. So interested in ACE is this side. Just transition on this side. Capacity building, Youth4Capacity on this side. And I'm very blind. Finance on this side, and adaptation. Yeah. So to my left, Youth4Capacity, finance, adaptation, and to my right, ACE, as well as just transition. And we will resume in the next 15 minutes. Thank you. Yeah. So it's capacity building to the left here, finance, adaptation, and to the right we have ACE and just transition.
Dear delegates, this is a reminder that we have 5 more minutes into the breakout rooms. Dear delegates, I'd now like to invite you to come back to the main session. The time for the breakout sessions has now elapsed. In this, dear delegates, as we settle down, as we settle down, I'd like to give you a brief run-through of the next section. We're going to be hearing from Yango's representative, Paul Jenkinson, on the activities and plans from the constituency, and we'll also be hearing from Marceli Oliveira, the COP30 presidency on the Youth Climate Champion. If we may settle down in a minute so that we can allow the next speaker to take on the stage.
Yes, thank you, Sifal, for the introduction. While everyone does just get seated, I'll begin to get started. It's a real honor to be here today representing Yango and sharing with you some information and updates about our work as a constituency going into this SBs. We've been working very hard. And as we saw lots of new faces and new hands at the start of this session, hopefully we'll be able to also give you some information for orientating you across the next days. I will start off with a quick introduction about what Yango is. It may be new to many of you, again, who are here for the first time. Before we move on to the activities we have at this SBs, in particular the policy statement, which you will see some of already distributed around the tables. So firstly, starting where it all began with some history. In 1992, we were at the Rio Earth Summit, where under the Principle 21 of the Rio Declaration, children and youth were identified as one of the 9 sectors in that declaration. This is the very first point of children and youth in the UNFCCC process. Across the years, we have been growing, of course, with 2005, the Montreal Conference of Parties, where we formally gathered and were heard as the International Youth Climate Movement for the first time. In Copenhagen in 2009, the Conference of Parties, we were recognized as youth as an observer constituency of its own for the very first time. And this was confirmed in 2011. So what we see here with so many children and youth around the room has really been building across already perhaps a generation, decades for sure. And it's important that the work we do now continues to build upon everything that has gone so far. And that is what we will be doing here at SBs. A little bit more about Yango. So we are a mechanism to make sure that our voices as children and young people are heard in the UN climate change space. We are present here, of course, on ground, but we are also very active throughout the year with the many working groups, which we will see later on, to make sure that children and youth can work together in the climate space and become empowered and competent to be working through the different advocacy strategies that we have on ground. And we are the oldest and largest children and youth constituency in the UN. A little bit on vision and mission. You can see some of the key topics that we focus on, making sure to build our community, our very large community at this point, to work with politicians, and ultimately to aspire and strive towards a healthy planet and humanity in the future. Of course, it is us who will be inheriting the future, so it makes it even more important that we are included in these spaces in meaningful ways. As you can see, we are not the only civil society constituency in the UNFCCC. There are 9 of them in total, a few of them on the screen there, and we work together in different cross-constituency formats as well to represent alongside our civil society colleagues. A little more on what Youngo actually is. It can be a little confusing, definitely for beginners at times. So this is a graphic to show all of the different elements within Youngo. We have the Youngo Council, which is formed by youth-led non-government organizations and other members within the global coordination team as well. This team is consolidated of different members within Youngo who help to make different decisions and operate throughout the different working groups. We also have 2 focal points, one for Global North and one for Global South. I'm sure you will see Amelia and Vanessa throughout the weeks ahead. The working groups, as mentioned, so we have thematic working groups working through all of the different topics that work under the UNFCCC, many of our contact points on the ground, which will be shown in the next slides as well. As you can see here, we have many working groups. If you do want to scan the QR code, you'll be able to find all of the contact points and their contact details. And of course, feel free to reach out to me afterwards if you are particularly interested in any of these, and I can help to direct you to the correct contacts. There are lots of them already, and this is growing. This is not an exhaustive list, and it really shows the passion and the different areas in which children and youth are involved in the process. Youngo at the SBs. Sorry, I know I'm going quite quickly. We're on a slightly short time frame, but of course do reach out afterwards for any information on these. So in the next slide, you will see an example of what might be seen from a typical day at Bonn. So maybe you've already had a day quite similar to this, which would be great. And if not, then this is an example of some of the different activities you may be engaged with. We will be having Youngo Spokes at 8 o'clock every morning in the Bonn room. So if you are trying to set up yourself for the day ahead, this is a place where we strategize together and we outline different engagements that are focused on children and youth throughout the day ahead. Throughout the day, you may be following negotiations, doing different advocacy work. Of course, it is important to be taking lunch and breaks as well. Various meetings with working groups, cross-constituency as well. Getting involved in bilaterals, so different meetings on a one-to-one level with different parties around the UNFCCC process as well. And moving later into the day, you may be joining us for the Youngo policy debrief. Again, this is another standout point in the agenda because it will be happening every day at the Bonn Climate Camp in the evening. So if you are trying to find somewhere where youth will be gathering, make sure to be attending the spokes in the morning and the policy debrief in the evening. And yeah, here's an example of some more bits you might be getting involved with. On to the next slide. So while we have all of the working groups who work hard throughout the year and even on ground on the different topics, we do have a specific conference coordination team, and listed here are the different groups that are active on ground. So we have Actions and Activism, organising the different actions that youth and civil society are involved with. We have awareness teams, bilaterals, teams, as well as community care, events and coordination, the policy team, which we'll touch on a bit more in just a second, the press team, making sure we are covering all the activities we are engaged with, and of course a support team as well. So there are plenty of ways for you to be getting involved. Even if this is your first SBs, the best way to learn is by getting involved and doing. So do make sure to feel brave, feel confident, and you can be helping out the different efforts that we have. On to the next slide. So yes, as mentioned, to zoom in a little bit on the policy side of things, what we have in the room here today is the result of many years of efforts, and you can see on the screen various different policy position statements that we have been putting out in the years that have gone by. On the left-hand side, the Global Youth Statement that was released in Glasgow, as well as COP27, the Global Youth Statement in Egypt, continuing forwards to where we are today. The Global Youth Statement is released on an annual basis at the COPs. This is a consolidation of efforts from youths all around the world, from the different local conferences of youth, regional conferences of youth that we host throughout the year. And we work very hard to be putting together this document on an annual basis to release to the COP presidencies and share our collective statements as children and youth across the world. This has been being produced on an annual basis, as mentioned, but we are really excited to be launching for the very first time a cross-conference document, which we will see on the very next slide. So this is our strategic policy position for SBs, and what we will be using this for is to build upon into conferences in the future. So this is something that we intend to now carry forward with us alongside the Global Youth Statement to make sure that we are able to advocate as youth in a more cross-conference manner. Within this, you can find lots of different information. It is less than 10 pages, 9 pages, and it includes different elements we are advocating for to make sure that we can effectively advocate for intergenerational justice, different youth-led initiatives as well about the NDC Youth Clause, as well as energy negotiation tracks, making sure that we are able to commit and instate meaningful youth engagement in a proper way throughout the process. So please do scan this QR code. It is broken up into different thematic demands as well. So if you are interested in gender, adaptation, energy, NDCs, anything, you are able to look further down in the document and understand about the position that we have as children and youth around those different topics. So make sure when you're going into negotiations to have this link ready and to get informed about the different negotiations that are going on. A little more just about this as well. You can see on the right-hand side the one-pager version that we have. And this is going to be, as mentioned, really helpful for you to be getting informed with the process, especially anyone who is new here today, to understand what we have been advocating for in the UNFCCC and how you can best get involved with the advocacy work that we are doing. And yes, as mentioned, we have the various children and youth demands broken down into a 10-bullet point list. You can't quite see it here, so we'll have to make sure you use the QR code to zoom in more detail, as well as the different thematic demands. So please do take a look. You can become more informed about what we are advocating for and make sure that you're able to capacity build yourself and learn about our position into this SBs as well. On to the next slide, please. Yes, so just to mention once more, we have the QR code here. We've all traveled very far to get here. We are representing many more children and youth who are not able to be here, and make sure that while we are here, I urge you all to make sure to take that privilege in your hands and become informed, work hard, be confident, and we can make sure to instate intergenerational justice into the work that we do and the policy advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul, for sharing with us those updates. At this time, I'd like to welcome Marceli Oliveira, the COP30 Presidency Youth Climate Champion, to share some of her remarks.
Hello. Hello. Hello, everyone. Thanks to the invitation to be here. I hope you are well. I believe you work a lot this session and have a lot of expectations for this week. Me too. And that's the reason I'm here to start this week, make one provocation maybe for you. The COP30 will be one different COP because will be one COP for implementation, one COP inside the Amazon, in the Latin America, and in my country, Brazil. So I have the responsibility to be the Presidency Youth Climate Champion, but at the same moment, be one black woman coming from the South Global. And this is responsibility enough. But with that position, I have the responsibility to provocate, to be together, and to understand another perceptions around the world I don't understand yet, but I'm available to be inside the process, to learn, to study, and to meet. So it's a pleasure to meet you. We have consultations this week. We are planning regional consultations, and we understand the multirão, the most important thing we have to do now. You listen about the multirão? Can you put the hand up for me? Never? No? Yes? Maybe? Okay, so I will explain a little about multirão. Multirão is one word in Portuguese, don't have a specific translation, but it's something like collective action. We here making the things we are making with the Yongo is a multirão. When we are inside our territories, talking with our friends, our communities, our youth movements, to change the world, change the system, and believe this is important, this is a multirão. The multirão don't need one person, one leadership, one country, or one party. The multirão needs are responsible with the climate change and with the children and youth most affected with the consequence, and these consequences are not decided in places when we are. These consequences, these decisions are in closed doors with adults and the most time with white men. So when we talk about youth, children, one gender agenda, one just transition agenda, about the multirão, we are talking about change this process. In our mandate, we believe we are a team, and we believe with Yongo, with the Indigenous Council, and another youth movements, we can send a strong message for the decision makers, for the negotiators, and for the world, because they are making choice about our future. And I have 26, so I want to live a lot. I want to know the world. I know we have different contexts, but maybe this is one thing make us youth and young people engaged with the UNFCCC process, the hope and the necessity to see our future protected, our territories protected, our culture, our ideas, our dreams. So it's a pleasure to be here. And I really have this expected for COP30. One multirão with the young person and the children protagonize the climate solutions based in nature, based in culture, and based in our ideas. So count with me because I count with you. And I understand it's not an easy process, but it's a necessary process, because if everything was okay, we didn't was here now. We are here because we have a problem. The climate change is a really problem. Destroy families, destroy dreams, schools. So I believe when I talk about multirão, I'm provocate one common sense with us. Don't be the language, don't be the difference, make our separated person. We are in this together, and they need us more than we need them. They need us to be inspired, they need us to understand the importance, the thing we are making inside the territories. They need us to read our documents, but they need us to learn with us. No one knows who is be a young person in that generation, in that condition with the climate crisis. So no one can say for us what the right thing to do. We are making together this future, and it's a pleasure make this future with you. I am Marcelo Oliveira. I the Presidency Youth Climate Champion for COP30, but please, let's do this together, because together this can works and make more hope for all the parties, all the countries, all the persons needing see us in different contexts and positions, but together, really together. So I'm available to talk. I'm available to eat, because no one eats in that conference. So this is a problem for me, but I have one official email, is Youth Champion arroba, I don't know what I say, arroba in English, but Youth Champion, this at Youth Champion at cop30.br. So please test me, and let's do something different this week, okay? Let's show for the negotiators how the power we have when we understand the word together. We have one provocate to the youth delegates today at the consultation. I don't will make an explanation now, but will be good seeing the first multirão come from the youth for the negotiators happen. And this will be start today at the consultation. We have this in the afternoon at 6. So please come with us in that multirão, okay? Thank you, Yongo, for the invite. And claps, please. Okay, thanks.
Oh, thank you, Marceli, I think, for that sort of bringing that collective, spirit and really advocating for that collective effort. As we're a bit over time, at this point in time, we will close the orientation segment of the session, but this is not the end of our session today. Of course, as you would see, we have an interactive segment coming up under our Youth4Capacity program, which would look at decoding the UNFCCC language. I'm sure if I were to ask who in the room knows every single terminology within the UNFCCC spaces? Anybody knows every single terminology? Okay, exactly. So that is why the next session will be quite useful in that regard. And we're delighted under our Youth4Capacity program to have partners from Cambridge Zero, ClimaTalk, University of Bath, and also Climate Words to deliver this session. But in the interim, whilst they come across, I would invite you to scan this feedback survey based on the orientation segment to share your views, to share your thoughts on how you enjoyed this session and also how we can take this forward. So our partners would now come across for the Youth4Capacity Decoding UNFCCC language session. And in the meantime, you're not leaving yet. You're spending your lunchtime here with us, so you'll fill in the feedback survey and we'll continue from there in the next 2 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to today's session on decoding UNFCCC language. My name is Dr. Amy Munro-Fore. I work at Cambridge Zero. I'll introduce the rest of our speakers in a moment. But first, I'd like to hand over to Alejandro, who's going to welcome us from Youth4Capacity.
Thank you very much. A warm welcome to the Gen Z and Millennial Changemaker in this room, and a warm welcome to everyone else as well, as we embrace the commitment to leave no one behind. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the 62nd session of the subsidiary bodies. We stand at day one of the conference, and you will see that the conference is for young leaders like all of you to access the tools, resources, networks, and knowledge necessary to drive impactful climate action. We all know that youth are at the forefront of the climate movement, demanding change and leading the way toward a sustainable, equitable future. But to truly transform our world, young people need the knowledge, skills, and support to lead effectively. Whether through online courses, workshops, or mentorships, capacity building is key to empowering young people to create tangible change within their communities and beyond. At the UNFCCC, we've been running the Youth4Capacity program for almost 3 years now, not just to build youth capacities, but to also mobilize them and learn from youth. And we're very grateful to all the young people we have engaged with and continue to do so. I would like to also extend our more sincere gratitude to our donors, the Ministry of Environment and Energy Security of Italy, whose generous contribution has made the Youth4Capacity program possible. Their commitment to supporting youth solutions and capacity is a thriving example of a government of a party that is effectively investing in young people. For those of you that are new to the UNFCCC process, I would like to give you a recommendation of my own. Write down all the abbreviations, and there are many, that you will come across through the conference. Understanding of a more complete understanding of the various terminologies associated with UNFCCC process, it's a skill, and it's very helpful for facilitating youth engagement. And with this session organized by the Youth4Capacity program in collaboration with Cambridge Zero, ClimaTalk and Climate Words, we take that first step towards decoding UNFCCC language together. As we move forward, I hope you'll take a full advantage of the opportunities and resources at SB62, particularly Youth4Capacity sessions, where it's not just the seat at the table, but the whole room that is yours to own and explore. On the screen, you can see all the capacity building opportunities and activities that the Youth4Capacity program is offering at SB62. Take a picture and scan the QR code for further information. These capacity building opportunities are your chances to not only gain valuable skills, but also to become part of a larger movement for climate action that's being shaped by passionate, driven youth like yourselves. The tools, knowledge, and networks you gain from this conference can help you drive change in your communities and beyond. Let this be the starting point for some of you and yet another stepping stone for others in your next steps as climate leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that welcome and those words. So I'm going to start by asking my two co-moderators to introduce themselves.
Thank you so much, Amy. Hi, everyone. I'm Emma. I'm the founder of ClimaTalk. We're very happy to be co-hosting this session today. ClimaTalk is an international youth-led nonprofit organization of about 100 volunteers in over 30 countries around the world, and we focus on making climate policy accessible to young people and empowering youth voices. We've been reporting live from the UNFCCC conferences since COP26, and on the ground we make the negotiations accessible. We track almost all negotiation streams, and we produce fact sheets, guides, and articles for young people to make it more accessible, and we also conduct interviews to amplify youth voices on the ground.
Hello everyone, I'm Pamela, co-founder of Climate Words. We're a dictionary of words written and defined by frontline experts from all over the world, and our mission is to provide climate education by making it as accessible as possible. And also, we're working with Youth4Capacity on a series around climate action, simplifying complex climate terminology through micro-documentaries. I'm mentioning it because it can serve as a very nice tool to better understand and navigate this space, because most of the words are around the UNFCCC. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma and Pamela. A final word about myself. The University of Bath also contribute to the design and the delivery of this workshop. I'm from Cambridge Zero. It's the University of Cambridge's climate change initiative. I work on climate change education primarily. As part of that programme, we work with multiple partners on producing the Act Now film project every year. This is a project which is about telling young people's stories in terms of how they're taking climate action. And we will be doing some filming on this, but I'll mention that very briefly at the end. So, today's session, we're not going to keep you sitting listening to us for too long. Today is about language, and it's about talking to each other. We will talk about some of the technical language that is used in the negotiations. You will get to a greater level of understanding, hopefully, by the end of the session than where you are now. But we all come to this meeting from all of our distinct cultures with all of our own mother tongues. This session is also about communication. It's about understanding that when you're using a word, that it might mean something different to somebody else, and being empowered to seek clarification, to say when you don't know what something means, and to find that common understanding together. So it's about that too, as well as the specific words. So we're going to move on to our first activity, which is an icebreaker, which is going to be on Slido. So once again, please scan the QR code. And we'll get going with this. I see lots of QR codes out.
And while you're scanning the code, I'd just like to remind you that we're in a space where a lot of us are learning, and it is okay to know the answers. We're not testing you. We're learning together and from each other.
All right. I'm glad to see quite a few of you on the slide already. So we can see our first slide here, which is the question, how many UNFCCC COPs and or SB conferences have you attended? And we can see the majority of the room, this is their first COP and SB, so you're in the right place, and that's really, really great to have you here, and welcome. So we're going to move on to the next slide, and I'm going to ask Pamela to talk us through the next few. Over to you, Pamela.
So who here has heard of global weirding? Would you be confident or comfortable explaining it? Do you kind of have an idea of what it is, or not really? Global weirding speaks to the complex ways climate change is affecting weather globally. It refers to the fact that many extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and more severe than they were in the past. That's just a simple definition. Next. Who here has heard of deep decarbonization? Okay. So to tell you a bit about it, deep decarbonization refers to the process of reducing greenhouse gas emissions to very low levels across all sectors of the economy, like energy, transport, and industry, in order to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius, ideally 1.5 degrees, above pre-industrial levels. And who here has heard of indigenous sovereignty? Who can explain it in their own words? Who has no idea? Okay, there's a lot of I know for sure. For those of you who don't know, indigenous sovereignty is the right of indigenous peoples to govern themselves, control their lands, and maintain their cultures and traditions. Okay, and climate colonialism, who could explain it? A lot of I know for sure. Climate colonialism refers to when wealthy countries or corporations impose climate policies or projects that exploit or harm poorer nations or indigenous peoples, repeating colonial patterns of inequality and control. Who here would have guessed that as the definition or would have been able to explain it differently? And lastly, care economy, a word that has been circulating a lot as negotiations start. Okay, there's a lot of I think I know. The care economy refers to the sector of work focused on caregiving and supporting well-being like childcare, elder care, and healthcare. A lot of work that is often unpaid or underpaid and essential for a healthy society.
Fantastic, thank you, Pamela. And as ever, when we run these sessions, what we see is for each and every word, some people are very sure they know, some people think they know, and some people don't know for every single word. If you didn't know a word, you are not alone in not having known it. You can seek clarification for what it means. So we're going to move on to the next section. We've got about 10 minutes here just to think about, in a bit more depth, in groups, about one word. Okay, and or one set of words, and those words are just transition. So what I'd like you to do at this juncture is there should be some worksheets out in front of you. If you've not got a worksheet, then stick your hand up and someone will try and make sure they're being handed around now. Fantastic. You don't need one each, you just need to have sight of one. And what I'd like you to do is to divide yourselves into groups of sort of 5 or 6 and together discuss what the words just transition mean to you. What do they mean to you? It doesn't have to be an official definition, it has to be about what these words mean to you. What do you take from the words just transition? So I'd like you to talk to the people in your immediate vicinity, a group of 5 or 6, and you're going to have about 6 minutes to discuss this word. So I'll bring us back together at 25 to 3, and I'd like to have someone from each group feed back what they talked about very briefly. So you've got 6 minutes to talk about the words just transition. Hello. I'm really pleased to hear all of the conversations that are happening around the room. And I hope you've been having some insightful discussions on what just transition means within each of your groups. This is the point where I turn it over to you, and I'd like somebody to volunteer to describe what their group talked about in summary and what they think just transition means. And when you speak, if you could say your name and the country that you're from, and what your mother tongue is, that would be really helpful. So who would like to go first? This group over here. And if you press the right-hand button, then you should be able to speak.
Oh, thank you. The right-hand button, was it? Okay, thank you so much. So we've got down, move away from fossil fuels to carbon neutral economy, all parts of the world inclusive and equitable, not disproportionately benefiting only the global north. And then we've got benefits to locals and indigenous communities, reforming harmful industries, especially ones that benefit from climate colonialism, prioritising what local and indigenous people need and allowing them to choose what they actually want and need for themselves rather than dictating downwards what they should want and need. And fair organisation of finances and resources.
Brilliant, thank you. Now I'd like to look around to the other room, to the other groups in the room. Has anyone else got anything they'd like to add to that? Was there something in your discussion that they've not already mentioned? Was there a different dimension or interpretation that you'd like to add?
Okay, thank you. Emmanuel Dabobi from Cameroon. And in my group, I think we all had a common language or a common word that we used to describe just transition, and that was sustainability. And in that light, we looked at the care, the finance, the work, the inclusion, and the generational aspect of it. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Have any other groups got anything else they'd like to add? Yeah. Just press the right-hand button.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm Grace. I'm from Scotland, and so native English speaker here. What we spoke about in our group was specifically the word "just" within the definition, and we spoke about how often this is not understood everywhere the same. We spoke that we use other working definitions, for example, fair, equitable, sustainable, people-centred, and we focused really on that social aspect in particular and ensuring that those benefits are applied to people themselves and that we see the livelihoods being the centre of this transition itself.
Fantastic, thank you. Have any other groups got anything else they'd like to add to our growing definition of what just transition means? No, brilliant. Thank you so much. When we've run this workshop before, we've done this for several other words, and I'd be very happy to share those words with you if anyone is interested and talk about them. The purpose of this is to see that although we start off with a really excellent definition, there are so many intersections, and I think as the last point that was made, the speaker from Scotland, there are so many different ways in which we can interpret the same word, and to take that sensibility into the conversations you have over the next 2 weeks. Yes, we're all speaking largely the same language, but are we meaning the same things? I'm going to hand over to my colleague Emma now, who's going to talk to us a little bit more about UNFCCC language and how it's used. There we go.
Thank you so much, Amy. Right, now we're going to go into the nitty-gritty of the UNFCCC agreements, and specifically starting off with the verbs that are used in agreements. So if you look at the structure of a treaty or a COP decision, you often, so basically, if you've not looked at one before, they're all downloadable on the UNFCCC website. I highly recommend you just to take a look. You don't have to read it from beginning to end, but it's really useful to just get a sense of what this looks like. And so the structure is obviously there's a big title of whatever the treaty or the COP decision is, and then there's a separation into the preamble and the operative part. So if we look at the verbs, they're also kind of recognizable by the verbs where the sentences start with. So in the preamble, you have verbs like recalling or noting, whereas in the operative part, you have verbs like decides that or resolves that. And so if we look at the difference between the two parts of the agreement, you have the paragraphs in the preamble which really provide the background and the context of the agreement or the decision that then follows in the operative part. It kind of guides the interpretation of the agreement. It has no binding legal value of its own, but it may be used strategically to accommodate any particular language claimed by the parties without creating binding obligations. So sometimes you have situations, not so infrequently, that one party really wants to have something in the text, another party cannot live with this piece of wording in the text, and then maybe there's a compromise to be found where it's added into the preamble, so it is kind of in the text, but it is not in the operative language of the text. So whereas in the operative part, this is the core of the agreement, and if there is a conflict or a direct conflict, the operative part prevails. So do kind of look out for that the next time you look at one of these agreements. Now, I also want to bring your attention to the next slide. And so here you can scan. I recommend you just scan the QR code because this is a brilliant summary by Simon Evans from Carbon Brief that was first posted at one of the previous COPs. And you really have a fantastic list of various verbs used in agreements and what they really mean. So this is kind of when it's describing something, when it's kind of welcoming, or when it's deciding, and which one is kind of warmer or more welcoming, which one is more of a compromise word. So I really, really recommend you take a look at this list. We won't go through it in detail now because that would take us more than the rest of the session, but please do scan and take a look at this. As well as this fantastic guide prepared by the IIED together with other organizations, where I also took out some of the previous parts of the presentation. Scan it, it's really useful. You have a great guide to negotiations terminology. You can really look at, it's sorted alphabetically, you can really look at the different words and what they mean. Okay. And now we are going to go over two case studies. Starting with a case study from the Paris Agreement. Now, was anybody here already active in the climate space when the Paris Agreement was decided? I wasn't, so wonderful. We've got a few people here. So maybe you even remember those headlines from the Paris Agreement. So this is the article that we're going to look at here. Does anybody want to read that out? If you should also have it on the document, so if somebody has one of the sheets and wants to read that out, yes, go ahead.
Well, hello, my name is Samara, but okay. So 4.4, developed country parties should continue taking the lead by undertaking economy-wide absolute emission reduction targets. Developing country parties should continue enhancing their mitigation efforts and are encouraged to move over time towards economy-wide emission reduction or limitation targets in the light of different national circumstances.
It's quite a paragraph here. Thank you so much. So what does anybody know, or do you think you know, what the key word is in this paragraph? Just put your hand up if you have an idea. Think that we were talking about verbs, if that gives any indication. If you don't, then I will just jump into it. the key word here is in the very first line. So developed country parties should continue taking the lead. And so if we check the next slide, there is a big difference in the wording of should versus shall. Should means that an action is not required, it's advised, it's recommended, but shall means that an action is required. And in a treaty such as the Paris Agreement, it actually means that it is legally required. And so the problem with this particular article in the Paris Agreement that caused these headlines, how a typo nearly derailed the Paris climate deal, is that at the very last kind of day, on the very last day and one of the final hours of the agreement, when everything had already been decided on and they actually just wanted to get the deal across the table and like have everybody agree and celebrate the Paris Agreement, the US found that actually in this paragraph, the word was shall and not should, which was a big problem for the US lawyers in the delegation because they said that they will not be able to bring this agreement back home because that means that it is legally binding and that means that the Senate will have to approve and ratify this, which they would not be able to get through. So what happened then? So as you can see here, this was like in the article that they had, to their horror, unwittingly approved this vital word. There are various versions of how this happened and how it came to this draft. But the question was now, how do you resolve this? Because if you start, this was kind of the problem of the host country, France, and the president, like they had the presidency at the time. If you start opening up the paragraph, like this article actually, because it was in the Paris Agreement, if you start opening up the discussions around this article, that also means that other countries are going to come in with additional wishes for changes in other articles that had already been agreed upon. So now, at the very last minute, the French came up with a very diplomatic solution, and it was agreed that there had been a typographical error, so basically a typo, that they put down to a, quote, anonymous sleep-deprived negotiating team transferring lines from one draft text to another. So if that was really the case, I don't know. But this solved this issue, and it was changed back to should. And the countries agreed then in the end, and that was how the Paris Agreement passed despite this last-minute crisis. But it was all down to this particular verb. Now we're going to move on to our second case study. And this is on the language on fossil fuels, which is also very interesting because there's a lot of debate, as some of you might already know. So in the Glasgow Climate Pact, which was COP26, I don't know if any of you remember, but there was a big discussion around the phasing out of coal power. In the very last, there was again, the very last plenary when the Glasgow Climate Pact was being decided, a particular country, in this case it was India, raised its hand and said, we're not going to agree to the current wording in the text, which was a phasing out of unabated coal power at the time. So in the very last minute, this was changed to a phase down of unabated coal power. And so now we're already going to move on to COP28. This is just to give a bit of a background information, and apologies if I'm rushing through these slides a little bit, just given time, but you will have access to the slides and all of the links, so you can take a look at this more closely. Now, the next part should really give you an idea of how such decisions are being made and like the process behind the development of the different paragraphs. And note that I'm saying paragraphs here because this was a COP decision and not a treaty, where you would then call these paragraphs articles if it is a legal treaty and an official international agreement. And so this was the paragraph number 28. The number changed several times during the negotiations of COP28, but Carbon Brief put together this brilliant resource of really tracking this with every single draft that came out. So you could see the very first draft. If you look at the different options on the screen, you had 3 options for the point C and 2 options for point D. And so this is really how it works, is you have different parties proposing various options, and then the facilitators of those working groups put those into the draft, and then, but that doesn't mean that anything is decided. This is really just to keep track of what could be in the text. And so in this case, we had option 1, an orderly and just phase out of fossil fuels. We also had phasing out of unabated fossil fuels, and we had a phase out of unabated coal power. So this was actually quite positive in the first draft. Then if we go to the next version, which was a few days later, we had another option added, which was option 5, in this case, another typo, option 4 again, but it should be option 5, no text. So there could actually be absolutely no text on this in the agreement, and otherwise you still have the phase-out language that we have seen in the previous draft. There was another version on the 11th of December, and so you could see there were a whole lot of other options added that weren't present previously, also kind of took a bit more shape, and we had the phasing down unabated coal and reducing both consumption and production of fossil fuels. So this was the version that was put out as kind of the suggestion for the final agreement. This was, if some of you remember following, this was on the very last, or kind of the day before, I think it was the day before COP was supposed to end. And this draft was extremely disappointing for the majority of people following from climate groups, from also various parties and negotiation groups that had advocated for a stronger language. And given that in the previous 2 drafts we had various language proposals of phase out, and now this had all basically disappeared, and we were only left with a phase down of unabated coal and a reducing both consumption and production of fossil fuels. And now there was a very last-minute decision that was being made of trying to find some kind of compromise. And so, if you remember, we were left with the paragraph 28, which calls on parties, also analyzed as a kind of an invitation or a request, which is the weakest of the various terms used for such exhortations. And we were left with a phase down of unabated coal power and the transitioning away from fossil fuels in energy systems, however, leaving in the options of technologies such as carbon capture. So you can see the influence of various lobbies and parties in this text. It is a compromise, and it really shows how such a text can develop. So I would really also encourage you, obviously you cannot follow all topics, but for the topics that you are tracking and for specific, crucial points, if you look at the drafts that come out throughout these weeks and also at COP, you can really kind of see the fingerprints of different interests in those various drafts. And it's then very interesting to see what comes out when you followed the entire drafting process. I'm going to pass back to you, Amy. After this very technical segment, we're going to have something more fun.
Brilliant, thank you. And I would also encourage you to hang around to the end. We're going to try and finish as close to 3 as we can, so that if you've got other things to go to, you can get to them. But if you'd like to hang around at the end and talk to us more, you're very welcome to. So this section is really trying to get into the fact that we've all come here from different places. So we've picked these words, intergenerational climate justice. They feel particularly relevant for young people. And we'd like to try and translate them into all of the languages that we have in the room. So intergenerational climate justice is relatively, easy for me to say in English as a native English speaker. But I'd like to hear from a volunteer who'd like to translate it into their own language. And when they do it, to explain what's the route they took. If they didn't use the most obvious route, why did they translate it in that way? So I'm going to open it up to the room for someone to translate the phrase intergenerational climate justice into their own language. Wonderful, thank you.
Hi. In Portuguese, we say justiça climática intergeracional. I just didn't get the part of you want me to explain what we get from. Oh, okay, got it. Well, my perspective is that we should consider the impacts, especially when we think about social communities and gender and ethnicity around generations to understand like the root causes and the most impact around climate justice on this like sectors of the society.
Fantastic, thank you. Would anyone else like to volunteer?
My name is Asma, I'm from Tunisia, and my native language is Arabic. So in Arabic it is العدالة المناخية بين الأجيال. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Andrea from Mexico, and in Spanish it's Justicia Climática Intergeneracional.
Wonderful, thank you. Anyone else like to volunteer? Wonderful, thank you.
I'll give it in French from Cameroon. It's Justice Climatique Intergénérationnelle.
Fantastic, thank you.
In Dutch, it's intergenerationeel klimaatrechtvaardigheid.
Brilliant.
Hello, you can hear me? Yes, I'm Sheila from Kenya, and in Kiswahili it is haki ya mabadiliko ya tabia nchi.
Lovely, thank you. Anyone else? We've got more languages in the room. Yes.
In Hindi, this will translate to Antar Pidigat Jalvayu Nyay.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think it was this lady.
Thank you. Good. Hi. I had to Google it in my language because we have so many words. In my language, it says Owenkanya mukukuma obutonde wakati w'abavubuka n'abakadde. And that's the one that made more sense because it integrates the young people and the old people and the justice in between. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you for sharing that. Any other languages in the room?
Hi. Oops. So in Russian it would sound like межпоколенческая климатическая справедливость.
Wonderful, thank you. Any final languages?
It doesn't really translate very well in Irish, but it's glúnal adlacum ceardas aroide.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm really enjoying that we're going deep with the languages. It's great. Has anyone got any other language they'd like to share this in?
Maybe the final one, the local one in German, it would be intergenerationelle Klimagerechtigkeit.
I think that's a brilliant place to finish this section. So what I'm going to ask us to do is all together say intergenerational climate justice, but in whichever language we want to. Maybe you caught a language very, very quickly just then. I'd be very impressed if you have. But I'd like you to say it all together. And can we do that on 3, 2, 1? Intergenerational climate justice. Brilliant, thank you. So we're going to finish with 1 minute left to go, which I'm very pleased about because we had a slightly shortened time. Please do stick around at the end. In particular, there's one opportunity that I just wanted to flag to you. Part of the reason that we've ended up developing and delivering these types of sessions is through the work we've done on producing a project called Act Now Film every year, which tells the stories of young people from all over the world who are taking climate action within their regions. My colleague Amy over there, where's Amy gone? Over here. She's going to be around later today and tomorrow morning filming stories of young people. If you'd like to be featured, we run some social media channels. If you'd like to be featured in that channel, come and talk to me, come and talk to Amy, and we'd love to hear your story. And do come and talk to us or scan the QR code. So that's an opportunity for you to get involved with that, but there is no obligation at all to do that. But otherwise, just to say thank you to my co-facilitators. Thank you to Youth4Capacity for the invitation to come back and do this. And thank you to all of you for your thoughtfulness and engagement with the session today. And I hope you have a great set of sessions at SB62, and do follow us on our socials. Thank you.